Let's broaden this as global affairs analyst Sam Phatey joins me from Washington, D.C. Good to have you join us, Sam Phatey.
My pleasure.
So the much-awaited interim government in Afghanistan has now been formed, and we see that Hassan Mohammed, who is on the UN blacklist, is to head that team. And we also see that Sirajuddin Haqqani, who was the leader of the Haqqani arm of the Taliban, the fiercest and most violent arm of the group, is to become the Minister of Interior. What does this say to you about the kind of government that the Taliban will run, and also the previous 2.0 in quote Taliban that we saw earlier, talking about inclusive government and all?
Well, it is clear that the Taliban, by lip service, would always talk to the international community about having an inclusive government, about ensuring some level of freedoms, not as hardline as they were in the late 90s. However, in pragmatism, what they would do would be to enforce strict laws that according to their interpretation of what Islamic jurisprudence and Islamic law or Sharia is about. So we can see that with the way the cabinet was constituted and the kind of people that are in the cabinet. Haqqani, for example, is a great example of that, a brutal enforcer. So what else do you need if you want the country and the people to conform? They are going to use Haqqani and his men to insert fear into the hearts and minds of the Afghan people who may think about forming ways to challenge and protest against the Taliban government.
And the people are not conforming, are they? Because we see several protests on the street. We've seen women protesting the inclusion of women in governance and just the rules being set by the Taliban for women. And it does seem like why the Taliban hasn't changed, Afghanistan has changed in the fact that it can now challenge the Taliban.
That is absolutely correct. Of course, 2 decades of war would absolutely change the country. Now, a lot of young people in this day and age of technology and the internet and YouTube channels, etc., a lot of young women that were doing this to earn a living have kind of withdrawn from it. It's a sad thing. However, the question is, who is going to support the ongoing movement to protest against the Taliban? They have total control of the government right now. So, of course, when you have somebody like Haqqani comes in and assert brutal force on these people that are protesting today in Afghanistan without no U.S. backing, without no ground support, then the question of sustainability comes into play. How long will they be able to ride? And what kind of support will they be able to get from the international community? The way that the U.S. left Afghanistan was not really thought through properly, I would say. I mean, again, it leaves everybody else at a very bad place to say, even if they support us, do we think we can keep trusting them? And to continue that kind of protest means you must be more organized. Your protest cannot just be anyone or any group of people freely protesting every time. You must be organized. And being organized means that those leaders of that particular organization would face challenges, but it allows them a seat on the negotiating table. And I think that's very important to take note of.
But how difficult does this Taliban leadership make negotiations and engagement with the group? Because it might be difficult. I mean, people will say it might be difficult for the U.S. to have to negotiate or engage someone who is on a terror list.
Well, you know, they are on a terrorist is one thing, but now they are part of a government that is in control of a country. And if you want to keep engaging the people in that country, if you don't want it to be a breeding ground again for terrorists like it was for Osama bin Laden and the Al-Qaeda network, it means you have to engage them. Even though Ahud and Haqqani, for example, are on UN blacklist, are under the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Treasury sanction list, you still have to engage them. They are representatives in this nation and they hold critical roles and critical positions in this in the Taliban government, which is now an Islamic emirate. So they have no other option, they have no other choice but to engage them. What makes negotiation now very difficult is a question of leverage. Who has the leverage right now? To be very candid with you, the Taliban do have a high level of leverage in any talks moving forward.
Is it perhaps now also time for the international community to reopen embassies in Afghanistan, just to have eyes and ears on the ground?
In fact, I'm glad you brought that up. It is a very important thing. Obviously, I know the United States and also the mostly Western European countries are not going to easily or openly accept or recognize the Taliban government. But you're going to have countries, China already did, and in due course, very soon, Russia would as well, and other countries, including those in the Middle East, would have to. There is no other way. They are the government. They have to live with them. They have to accept that. Opening embassies means they will be able to engage them at both bilateral and multilateral levels. In fact, if they take a multilateral approach, they would be able to garner some strength, some support, and have some leverage and control over certain things. And perhaps then they would be able to liberalize some of the policies that the Taliban government wants to implement in Afghanistan currently. So it's very important that they have the diplomatic relations with them and open those embassies and start communicating.
And talking about diplomatic relations, we see that China has now released a statement talking about how they are willing, or they are ready to work with the new Taliban government. It does seem like China is eager and in a hurry to fill the vacuum that the U.S. left when it withdrew troops.
China is very well aware that in Afghanistan right now, it's not about the security or how they are going to protect their borders or counter terrorism measures. In Afghanistan right now, one of the most important things for any government, including the Taliban government that just took over, is to ensure that there's economic development and there's economic growth, and to ensure that people are able to feed and take care of their families. China sees that opportunity and is going to tap into it by all means necessary. And the start of that is by recognizing the Taliban government. They are going to reopen their embassies, they are going to sign deals, and they are going to start economic activities in Afghanistan. That is what China cares about, not the human rights concerns or the human rights situation. They are not affected by this. And the Taliban is also eager to ensure that those economic structures are in place. So they will not think about how China is treating the Rohingya Muslims in its further southern provinces there, and putting them in concentration camps. One would have thought they would bring that up, but they are not absolutely going to bring that up. They really wanted those economic pillars to be rebuilt again. And what better way to go than to go to China? The US would come with conditions. China may not have some strings attached as long as it is mutually beneficial.
So much to watch out for in the coming days, especially as protest continues in that country. Thank you so much for helping us analyze this. Phatey, Global Affairs Analyst.
My pleasure.